Welcome to episode 1361 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
Buenos dias, folks. Hope everybody is staying safe and warm. I know a lot of our listening audience is getting hit by the giant phallic storm that is blanketed in most of the Midwest right now, and I'm just below that. But I have to go to Aberdeen, Maryland tomorrow for work, and so I'm going to be dealing with it myself if I can even get there. But I hope, like Jeff Zimmerman. I saw your reach out to Spore yesterday and we're like, hey, come hang out. It was like 2 degrees. And we all know that Paul would turn into a human icicle if that actually happened. So yeah, I hope everybody's staying warm and dealing with this crap the best they can, because this is some type of situation going on. But I did see like something that warmed me up immediately when I read it today. I think we are 60 days for opening day right now, 60, which is great. And so, you and Paul said on the podcast, the Friday episode, where it's just like we're peak, like we've hit the other side, and you guys were doing the catcher positional preview, and it's just like boom, boom, boom. It's like now if people are leaving football, like me. I hope you all won your fantasy football championships. I got boat raced, like absolutely. I was up against another Washington fan, and I said it felt like my own Super Bowl 18. Because he beat me by 97 points. 97. Like he set the scoring record for the league. But hey, if you're going to lose, get blown out. Just get waxed. And that's a good thing. So I don't have any regrets for lineups, but I am so glad fantasy football is over because I don't have to worry about anything else. It's all baseball.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a friend yesterday, and he was like, did you even realize there was football on today? And I was like, no, not really, because Washington's already in the playoffs, so I don't really care what happens.
Yeah, but they're playing Dallas. You kind of have to.
Yeah, I'm going to watch that today. But, and then, fantasy football's over, right? I won my 2 championships of the 10 leagues I was in. And so, like, I'm just kind of chilling. Don't really care about football until the playoffs start. And I get to watch Washington get blown out in the first round, I'm sure. So, yeah, it's, I'm like full on baseball. Not that I haven't been full on baseball for like all year. So
right, but it's no distraction. It's 100%. I don't have to like tinker with lineups, read any advice articles about anything else but baseball now.
Yeah,
I know you're drafting. I still haven't drafted yet.
I'm on a draft hiatus right now because I did 3 gladiators and I'm not doing any DCs this year. So it's kind of like I'm now waiting till February until my next draft. So
that's kind of where I'm at too. I want to finish up. Eno made had a great line on the latest rates and barrels. He's like, I need to put my my advice into action. Like he wanted to, I forgot exactly the word he used, but he's like, I need to maybe market test what he's been saying. So it's like, I want to get all my stuff done. Then I want to go market test it rather than like draft it and then write it afterwards. So yeah, I've been waiting to start anything until I get the bold predictions done, which are now halfway done.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to jump into anything until I'm done with my projections. And I'm still a little bit behind. Well, I'm a lot of bit behind, but I'm still finishing up. I'm hoping to finish up hitting projections either tonight or tomorrow, and then start pitching projections here early on this week. So, yeah, once I'm done with pitching projections, maybe I come around and do another draft. But I don't have anything scheduled until February, which is going to be kind of nice. So, kind of just relaxing and doing prep work and talking to you and Paul. And yeah, so we're going to jump in and talk about sophomore pitchers. We've got a bunch of them to talk about. The list was getting so long that I was like, oh, I just got to cut it off here at some point. But first, let's jump in to some news. We did have some signings and some trades and things like that happened over the course of the last week that Paul and I haven't talked about or happened in the last couple days. Nothing like overly huge, but definitely some things that are going to have some fantasy impact. Let's start with Josh Bell signs a deal with the Washington Nationals. I really like this deal. Josh Bell, I think he's just a really, really solid first baseman. I was surprised when he didn't seem to get a lot of traction in in kind of the market last year, gets a 1-year deal with the Nationals this year. Where are you at on Josh Bell?
I mean, it's a good landing spot for somebody, when you look at the depth chart, take a look at it and see where things sit. And right now, Roster Resource has Josh Bell hitting 5th as the full-time DH. And that kind of cuts into Juan Yepez for that kind of opportunity. So it's a nice landing spot for him, but it's kind of understandable. Like if you just go to Baseball Savant and hit the play sign and just look at how Josh Bell has declined the last couple of years, it's been a little frustrating because I'd like Josh Bell for these same types of reasons last year. It just never materialized. And the skills have shown a decline, but the Nationals, this is a really good spot for him because he's not being asked to carry a lot. And when you have with the Nationals looking, you have Abrams and Cruz and Wood. So you have that youth at the top of the lineup, which we talked about a little last week. And then you got Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Bell there for that. That's nice. So it should be a really nice, if he can decelerate the decline of the skills, he should have a lot of RBI opportunities here. And you have to hope that everything else can just be about league average, but he should be able to fall into some RBIs. But if he does struggle, then Juan Yepez is around. The fact that Bell just got $6 million tells you this is like nothing else. This is okay. You are DH. Please, somebody on Blue Sky was like, hey, I wonder if Josh Bell still is his outfielder glove. I'm like, I hope they buried that damn thing.
Yeah.
So he needs to be, we don't need to see Josh Bell in the field anymore. But at least it's an insurance policy if something were to happen to Nathaniel Lowe and they decide, they need a backup situation type there. But it's a nice landing spot for Josh Bell, given what's in front of him and the opportunity that it presents for him to recover some of that RBI production, not skill, RBI production.
Yeah, I mean, the skills have declined a little bit, but I mean, he's still just a kind of a solid hitter, makes, league average in zone contact, can hit the ball, pretty hard. His big problem over the course of his career, but more so over the course of the last, 4 or 5 years has been, he just doesn't elevate the ball enough. He just doesn't put the ball in the air enough. He puts the ball on the ground, around 50% of the time, which limits that power production because we do know that he does have power in that bat. But he's just kind of a solid dude. I think, you can kind of pencil him in for 550 plate appearances, 20 home runs. And I think he's going to be pretty good. And I kind of love what the Nationals are doing here. They've added Bell, they've added Nathaniel Lowe. Both these guys, they're not massive power hitters like you kind of usually see from the first base position. Mm-hmm. But what they do is get on base. Nathaniel Lowe walks at a good rate. Josh Bell is a career 11% walk guy. I know the walk rate was down last year to about 8.5%, but he's a career 343 on base percentage guy. And I think it's really nice to see them kind of add these guys to the middle of this lineup to kind of support these younger guys. I think the Nationals, and I'm not the first person, and I will not be the last person to say this, but they're going to be a really fun team to watch, and I think they're going to try to compete for a wild card spot in the National League. I don't know if this is going to be more of a transition year or if this will be a year where they actually make the playoffs. But if you're looking for a fun dark horse team to bet on, I think the Nationals are going to be one of them.
So, and I heard you and Paul talk about this a little bit. You both seem to be rather excited about the Nationals going into it. And offensively, I'm just not there with you guys on the pitching side of it.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, if you want to look at them as like this year's version of the Tigers, where it's like, hey, wow, they make a jump ahead of time around that youth. The Tigers had Skubal. And it would take the 0.01 percentile chance for Mackenzie Gore to get where Skubal was. And the Tigers had a pretty decent bullpen. And those two conditions are not on that Nationals roster yet. I maintain they should go out and get one of these. Go get a Tanner Scott. Go get Jeff Hoffman. Go get something to do something, because they have the opportunity to take that step forward this year. But I just see the imbalance on their roster right now.
Yeah, they absolutely have made more gains in the offense than they have on the pitching side of things. The bullpen is kind of a mess. Like it's you've got Derek Law, and then a bunch of guys no one's really ever heard of in that bullpen. I'm sure they're going to add to it at some point, even if it's just kind of filling out that bullpen. But it's really bad. The rotation has a bunch of guys, and I think that's just the best way to put it. There's no real impact pitchers. Mackenzie Gore has shown flashes. Mitchell Parker showed some flashes last year. Jake Irvin, outran kind of his underlying skills for a large portion of the season. But I mean, they're interesting, and they could use a frontline starter, and maybe if they are in kind of playoff contention halfway through the season, they can make a deal for one. But I just like what they're building in Washington. I love that they're kind of building this really fun young offense,
Right.
and that they've got pieces to kind of grow around. Like I said, I don't think they're necessarily ready to make that. Like, I'm not going to be one of these people who goes out and bets on the Nationals to make the playoffs, because like last year, it was Kansas City Royals for me. The year before, it was the Arizona Diamondbacks, kind of these dark horse teams that I was betting on to make the playoffs. I don't think the Nationals are that team, but I do think they're going to be fun and interesting to watch for the first time in a few years.
Yeah, if we try to place, I mean, we mentioned Hoffman and Scott or Carlos Estevez, like find something for the bullpen. But then you look at the starting and looking at who's remaining for free agent starting pitchers. Like you said, they need some kind of big like workload guy, right? Lance Lynn like fits that profile to a T. Like if they're going to quantify their way and just like bulk their way, Lance Lynn would be to a T. And they just got rid of Patrick Corbin, so they can absorb the suck for a while. So, but it's I'm looking at names: Jack Flaherty, Nick Pivetta would be great, but Nick Pavetta's got the qualifying offer penalty hanging on him too. For that, you got Kyle Gibson, you got Jose Quintana. This is what's left. So this may be what they go forward with. I would like to see them. I could get on board with you and Paul if the Nationals added another starter and another guy in the bullpen. Right now, I just can't. They'll be fun to watch, but I just can't get on board with them being a sleeper candidate because that pitching staff is just too much imbalance for me on that roster.
That's fair. Moving on, Matt Mervis. He's free. He's away from the Cubs who hate him. He gets traded to the Marlins. Oh, damn it. So, Matt Mervis is traded in a deal that sends Vidal Brujan over to Chicago. And Mervis is free finally, but he's stuck in Miami. Where are you at on Mervis now that he should have a path to full-time playing time?
And this is the kind of trades Miami should be making, right? They trade Vidal Brujan, who has just been a major disappointment, considering he used to be a top 50, 60 prospect. It was always in the high with the Rays, ran out of options. It's just never hit at the major league level, and has not played good defense. And so he was out of options, and they trade him to the Cubs. And Matt Mervis does have an option. In fact, Jason Martinez has Matt Mervis in the minors. So it's like, but he can come to camp and hit. And it's just one of these things where you look at it and you have to wonder if Matt Mervis was just like super frustrated about not having that opportunity to get to the majors. Because, 2 years ago, never nervous Mervis. We saw him in the AFL coming off that monster year, 36 home runs, 119 RBIs, 92 runs scored, 156 WRC plus. Then he goes back to the minor leagues and has a 132 WRC plus. Then he goes back to the AAA for the third time and has a 97 last year. And he struck out more. So it's like, I look at that and I just wonder how frustrated was he that he could just not get to the major league level. And so now he has all the opportunity in the world. And I love this because you look at what the Marlins are doing. Look at that roster. And if you were to combine the Nationals and the Marlins roster into one, that could be a World Series contender. It's like the Marlins have pitching. Yeah, they've got some pitching and they've got some bullpen. Some, not a lot, but some. But their offense is kind of like, what? And when you look at Mervis, this is just the type of guy I would like to see have that opportunity, go out there and push aside Jonah. He's competing against Jonah Bride and Devison De Los Santos for a spot in that lineup. So if Mervis can come to camp and hit and show that perhaps the last year was more of like, I am tired of living in Iowa. I want to get out of Des Moines. I belong in the major leagues. Maybe this is a really good opportunity for him. And so I love this because this could have a chance. We could see. It's just frustrating to see, as I always think back to like Desmond Jennings with the Rays, how he would sit in Durham forever. Then he finally got up and he wasn't really that great. So maybe that's what the case is with Mervis, but now he'll have the chance. He'll get up, and there's really no reason why he's not on this opening day roster, because you can make a argument that he's the second most talented bat in that lineup behind Jesus Sanchez, if not the best, because of what they've added. So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if Mervis doesn't make the opening day roster, it's on him, right? Like he's right. There's no reason for the Marlins to hold him back and hold him down in the minor leagues if he is hitting the ball. The question is he going to hit? I mean, I think this is a guy you take a gamble on in DCs for sure, and then depending on how he looks in spring training, maybe you take a shot on him in some deeper mixed leagues. We weren't too far removed from him being everybody's favorite prospect for like a month. So I'm excited to see him get an opportunity. It's not a great landing spot in terms of the team that's going to be around him if he is on the major league roster, but he at least will get playing time or the opportunity to get playing time if he's hitting. Just kind of a name to file away and think about as we start approaching drafts in February and March, that Matt Mervis will have an opportunity to get playing time, and it'll be on him to actually earn it. Do we care about Vidal Brujan at all?
No. It's just he's on the Cubs roster. The upside about Vidal Brujan is that he plays multiple positions. So if you're in a 50-man draft and hold and you're in the 50th round and you need somebody to cover a position, that's when you care about Vidal Brujan. But it just to outline how bad things have been, he has 550 career plate appearances as a major leaguer. Take a guess what his WRC plus is.
Probably like 72.
That's way too high. 50.
Oh,
50.
Jesus.
He is that bad. And it's just, for me, it's, throughout the minor leagues, he got on base. He accepted his walks. He made a lot of contact. He stole a lot of bases. Like I'm going 2018, 55 steals, 112 runs scored, almost a 1-to-1 walk to strikeout ratio. And then he got to the major league. It was on the up down, and he has just been overpowered at the major league level. Just overpowered, overmatched. They would just continue to beat him up with fastballs, and he just has not hit as a major leaguer. And defensively, it hasn't been good either. The Rays tried to find a home for him, never could. Sent him to Miami. Miami tried to find a home for him defensively, never worked, but just has not panned out. And he's still, he's 26 right now. He turns 27 before the season starts, but this is quad A, and I don't know if it's even quad A anymore. This may be 3.5, but no, don't care unless you're in a 50 round and you need somebody that you can plug into a spot. That's it. I can't make an argument for Vidal Brujan being a viable fantasy asset, even in a 12-team NL only league. There's nothing there. He can't get on base to use his one skill that he still has, a speed.
It's a bummer because this was a guy who was a top 20 prospect. I was really high on him when he was coming up to the minor leagues. I thought he was going to be a star, and it just has never translated to the major league level. So, he's going to be in this super utility role in Chicago, and probably not viable in any fantasy league outside of the deepest of.
And he's out of options, and I don't understand. I get why the Cubs were like, oh, hey, let's we need something. And it's a utility fielder for them.
Yeah,
that's exactly it, and that's it. But Brujan's out of options, there's nothing. They can't send him down unless they're like, okay, we just got to buy some time for Triantos, Ben Cowles. I'm just looking at their organizational depth chart. Miles Mastrobuoni. It's like, what are you doing? But Brujan's out of options. It wouldn't surprise me if he's off the club by May.
Yeah. It won't surprise me either. His benefit to the team is that he played 7 different positions last year. Like, so he can play literally anywhere on the field outside of pitcher or catcher. And so like, yeah, he gives them flexibility if they need to give guys days off, if they have injuries. But other than that, I agree. There's a high likelihood he is not on this team by Memorial Day.
So, I mean, the only other league I can possibly consider adding Brujan is if you're doing a hacking mass league with Baseball Prospectus, you're trying to put together the worst. Brujan is a first rounder.
The problem with Brujan in that format, though, is you need guys who actually play. And can you really project him for more than 300 plate appearances?
That is true. That is true.
So, all right. Moving on then. Let's talk about another national. Trevor Williams signs a 2-year deal to play and pitch for the Nationals. They've already guaranteed that he's going to be in the rotation to start the season. Williams showed, I mean, I don't know. Williams pitched really well at the beginning of last season and then got hurt and missed, I think, the majority of the rest of the season, if not the entirety of the rest of the season. But prior to getting hurt, he had thrown 66 2/3 innings, had a 2.03 ERA with a 23% strikeout rate. Any interest in Trevor Williams?
It was interesting what he was doing last year. Before he got hurt, like I said, he was improving a strikeout rate after the decline from 2023. And so, kudos to the Nationals for doing it. He decided, added a sweeper was one of the things that looked at, because he had toyed with it a little bit in 23, and it became a secondary pitch last year. And so that you could see that's where some of the strikeout rate rebounded from. Getting back to a volume thing, somebody's got to take a step forward in this rotation. And it's got to be multiple people. And so if they're guaranteeing him a starter, I'm fine taking Williams as a very late round option, as somebody I could stream in and out depending on matchups.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you kind of look at where the schedule lies in Washington, and I'm going to look it up as we talk. For me, if they have a pretty decent start to the season, in terms of who they're opening up against, he might be a guy to kind of put on the back end of your roster and kind of see how he pitches. And if he kind of continues what he's doing. Last year, the Nationals had a pretty easy schedule to start the year. And
they open against the Phillies. That's their
opener. Want him there.
Phillies, then they go to Toronto, then they have Arizona, then they have the Dodgers, then they have the Marlins and Pirates. So, I mean, if it lined up, he could open up against the Jays, but then he's going to have to take the Dodgers on. And then so that's kind of the struggle. It's like if you try to line it up and let's say that Williams is the 4th starter. So he sits out, let's say he gets the start Monday on the 31st against the Blue Jays. And so if he does that, that means he could have a 2-step in week 2 against the Diamondbacks. And if he does that, if that's schedule that he's on, then he misses the Dodgers, and then he takes on the Marlins, then he has the Pirates, and then he has potentially a start at Coors. But if he misses that, then he's got a home start against the Orioles. So schedule-wise, that's not bad if he gets the 4th starter.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not great, but he did pitch very, very well, all of last season. So he had 11 starts before getting hurt at the end of May, and then came back and threw 2 starts and then good starts against the Cubs and the Phillies to end the season. So, yeah, I think he's the guy you can put on the back end of your roster and kind of see how it goes. I think you want to be ready to drop him, right? If he ends up looking like the old Trevor Williams that isn't much more than a mid-4s ERA pitcher, then you drop him real easy, you go pick someone else up. But I think there's a little bit of upside here in the fact that he's able to go deep enough into games to win. They're not going to baby him at all. They're going to let him just kind of go. And he showed some decent skill improvement last year. So definitely a guy for DCs and 15-team mix back into your roster.
I mean, it's worth just looking at the numbers last year. Obviously, again, it was a limited sample size for him, but four-seamer, 196 batting average, 192 expected average, 18% whiff rate. Sweeper, 135, 144, 46% whiff rate. And those are the 2 pitches he was throwing over half the time, 58% between those two. So it was working. something there was doing well for him. So it, like I said, if you could take him, not a set it and forget it guy, but let's see what happened if we, if you and Paul are right about like the Nationals being on the up, then this is the kind of thing you want to try to see, where like who can find some wins on a club if they're projected for 80, but they're playing like a 90 win team. There's hidden value there.
There you go. All right. Next guy on the docket is Josh Rojas. He signs a 1-year deal with the White Sox. Rojas has just kind of been a tease for fantasy for quite a long time, but he's going to have opportunity to play at least on the strong side of the platoon, if not every day in Chicago. Any interest in Josh Rojas?
So inside story, our RotoWire Slack channel, right? We were talking something. I think Ryan Boyer was needing to add Josh Rojas, and some reason when he was adding multiples, and I was like, yeah, 10 Josh Rojas's equals one good player. That's why, and that's where things were. But you're right. Like he should be the everyday or the strong side platoon situation at third base, because you look through this. I was working on the AL Central Bold predictions right now, and I chose Lenine Sosa because he's out of options. He's going to play second base. He's had some offensive talent, so I didn't go to the Rojas. But when you look at Rojas, he does still have one minor league option. But again, Chicago is an open tryout.
Yeah.
They were 41 and 121 last year. Even if they improve by 50%, they're still a 100-loss team. Just put that in perspective. But there's not, when you look at the depth chart, the organizational depth chart, Brian Ramos is the playing time threat to Josh Rojas. If Rojas doesn't do well, then Ramos could come up and we could see that. But that's kind of it. And you look back, but Rojas is going to find some, because of being in a strong side platoon and the counting production that he's done previously. And the fact that he should have all the playing time against right-handed pitching in Chicago, AL only formats is what we're talking about here. And so this helps him for this coming season, but set your expectations. I still don't feel he's mixed league material because he really shouldn't be playing against lefties, and the White Sox should be trying to find ways to get these other guys in the lineup too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't project him for more than 400 plate appearances. That being said, like, he could steal double-digit bases and potentially, hit double-digit home runs in that time. It's just not going to come with a very good average. Doesn't hit the ball particularly hard. It's all going to be about opportunity and volume for him. He's going to have to be an accumulator in order to kind of rack up stats outside of DCs, maybe AL only. Like, I just don't think you're going to get much from Josh Rojas at this point in his career. Moving on, Hye-Seong Kim signs a deal with the Dodgers. This is the brother of Hye-Seong Kim. He was posted by his KBO team, ends up going to the Dodgers on a 3-year deal with, I believe, an option. It's an affordable deal. The Dodgers have said he's going to be kind of a utility infielder for them. But is this writing on the wall that Gavin Lux might be in trouble?
You would hope not. The writing on the wall should be Chris Taylor needs to go. That's what you hope. But it potentially, that could be it. But right now, it's this. If we take the Dodgers at their word, and Kim is a utility to kind of ease his transition over. We've talked about this on a lot of the first year acclimation that Asian baseball league players have had coming over. Ichiro aside, blows the kind of learning curve a little bit, but especially the batters, and that's where maybe that's what this is about. But hopefully, the thing should be Chris Taylor needs to go. But if Lux moves, that obviously impacts his fantasy value, and there will be a number of teams lining up to take that on if that's going to happen. But it's kind of crazy that Lux still has 2 minor league options as well. The Dodgers could send him down if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, Hye-Seong Kim, from a fantasy perspective, I don't know what he's gonna be. I want to believe hey, he can translate fairly easily. He's very similar to his brother, except for he doesn't really have much power in his bat. He did hit 11 home runs in the KBO last year, but Prior to that, he had his career high in a season was 7. He's more of a contact first kind of guy. He can, get his walks. He doesn't strike out, but he steals a lot of bases. Stole 30 last year. Stolen as many as 46 in the KBO. But the KBO is kind of, from a skill level, it's kind of maybe AA, maybe in between AA and AAA.
That's exactly that's exactly how I've heard it compared previously. AA, like AA, low, AAA. I mean, if you look, let's just use his brother as an example. Similar, his brother showed more power in the KBO. Didn't have as much speed, but still had it. It's very similar plate skills for discipline, walk and strikeouts. But then his first year over, 202,
he struggled,
270. He struggled, and then since has been an above average hitter. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at here. It's okay. Yeah. Is this a talented player landed on the Dodgers roster? Let's get a little excited, but again, we're talking a league jump. We're talking a guy that was essentially playing AA baseball, now going to the major league. So I'm more excited in a keeper league format, maybe dynasty format, but a reset league, not terribly excited about this move.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is, if you're looking for a guy you can take a gamble on kind of in the middle rounds of a first-year player draft, because you know he's probably not going to be super valuable this year, but maybe next year he could be. In 2026, when if he is playing a utility kind of infielder position, hey, he could pick up 2 or 3, maybe even 4 positions in terms of his eligibility for 2026. But outside of a DC, I just don't see that there's going to be very much value for Hye-Seong Kim this year. And I'm not worried quite yet about Gavin Lux. But Gavin Lux is definitely on notice this year with the Dodgers. All right, let's finish out the moves with Charlie Morton. Hey, we knew the Orioles were going to make a big signing in their pitching staff, right? They needed a pitcher, and they go get Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton signs on a 1-year, $15 million deal. He's going to slot into that rotation. Is this the most lackluster move of this offseason so far?
This is, I don't know. I don't understand what Baltimore's doing here. You have this young, awesome core of hitting.
Did you read the pitcher list? Because I think I think they've nailed it, because that's the only thing that makes sense. And for those who don't know, I can't remember who it was. The pitcher list got an inside scoop from someone within the Baltimore organization that said that the GM there just wants to seem like the smartest guy in the room, and he's going to do what other people don't want him to do just to prove he's the smartest guy in the room. This feels like it, because it's insane that this is their big signing.
So I saw that Ken Rosenthal had an article at The Athletic today focusing on what Baltimore has and hasn't done this year. I mean, the only way to save this is like to go sign Sasaki. I don't think that's in the realm of possibility. That's the only way to save this, because this Morton thing honestly doesn't make any sense to me.
Maybe it's a Dylan Cease trade. Like, I mean, they do have all of these assets that they don't have enough room for, right? Like, they have this embarrassment of riches on the offensive side of the ball, to the point where, like, how are they going to get Heston Kjerstad plate appearances? Right now we're not even projecting on roster resource for Kobe Mayo to be on this roster,
which to me is nuts. But
it's absolutely nuts. Like, they've signed like nobody outside of now Charlie Morton, and Sagano, from Japan. I guess they signed Tyler O'Neill, but like,
and Gary Sanchez. But
exactly.
Again, this is how a non-contending Baltimore team would put together a roster.
Yes,
and to me, Morton looked old. I mean, he looked old last year. I took him. I had him in XFL. He was somebody that I had. I'm like, look, he's on Atlanta. He should be, he should be fine. They should do well. And Morton finally started looking his age. I mean, he's 41. And he's now to the point where he is just trying to throw his curveball as much as he possibly can. And with the fences coming in, already an issue with right field, but now left field. And to me, Morton looked old last year. And I get that he's can probably give him the volume that the Orioles want here. But other than that, I really, really don't like this signing. And I think if anything, it impacts. I wasn't targeting Morton anywhere. If he falls, you take him, you as our new slogan on this podcast seems to be value and volume. And there could be something, but with Charlie Morton this year, this could be he was already streamer status for me. I'm just trying to look and see where his ADP is still in the 500s. I don't honestly understand why it's going to move that much higher, but his min pick is 394. And I don't know if maybe that moves to 350, but there's a lot more risk here. And if your upside is, he should get wins on a good Baltimore offense. Okay. At what cost are those wins going to come out?
I mean, he's had the last 2 seasons, he's had a 132 whip last year and a 143 whip the year before. Like, Charlie Morton's underlying skills have been actually pretty terrible over the course of the last couple seasons. And I just don't see it getting that much better or any better in Baltimore. I just don't. I wish I could remember whose TikTok I saw, but there was someone who was talking about the Orioles on TikTok yesterday, and they kind of brought up the fact, like, 3 years ago they had the number 1 prospect in baseball, Adley Rutschman. 2 years ago they had the number 1 prospect in baseball in Gunnar Henderson. Last year they had the number 1 prospect in baseball in Jackson Holliday. All 3 of these guys are on this roster with Grayson Rodriguez, who has been the number 1 pitching prospect in all of baseball. They still have, one of the top prospects, if not the top prospect, in Samuel Basallo in the minor leagues. They have Kobe Mayo in the minor leagues, another top, 75 guy in Chase McDermott. Like, this is a loaded team, like, already at the major league level with other young guys like Jordan Westberg and Hesse Kerstad. Trade some guys and go get a frontline starter. Like, how much better would this team look if they were just bringing back Corbin Burns? Obviously, Corbin Burns, it seems like he didn't want to sign back in Baltimore. He wanted to go back out to the west, western side of the country. Please stop calling Arizona West Coast, because it is not on a coast. Go get
listen
Dylan
to country
Cease.
music.
Yeah.
Come on.
Go get Dylan Cease. Go get, like, they should have been the team that went and got Garrett Crochet. But, like, I don't understand what the Orioles. Please.
Yeah, and I hope the plan isn't, Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells are coming back from their elbow surgery, so they'll just hit the ground. No.
They need
2026, but
to go get, and maybe they're going to wait till the trade deadline and see what they can get then. They can, do well enough to kind of stay in the division race, but this division is stacked.
Yeah, every year of this window of talent that gets wasted by trying to
is a shame. It's a crime. It is an absolute crime.
Yep.
All right, let's transition over to the main topic of the day, which is sophomore pitchers. When we start with sophomore pitchers, we got to start at the top, right? Paul Skenes came in and was just dominant. He's currently being drafted at pick 11 in the NFBC. That is only going to go up as we get closer to main event season. He will be a top 7 pick and maybe even a top 5 pick come draft day when we see kind of those high stakes main event leagues. Where are you at on Paul Skenes for this year?
I don't take pitchers in the first round, so I won't be on Paul Skenes. But that said, I remember last year at this time where people were taking Paul Skenes, and I thought they were nuts.
I did too,
and they were right. If not, so that's where that's kind of my overall thought.
They were right, but for the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the rationale you and I had in terms of not wanting to draft a guy like Paul Skenes was wrong. I think that is still the correct play. And when we start talking about other guys who are not going to be on the major league roster, won't be up till late May at the earliest, like, we're going to fade those guys again, right? Because you have to hold those guys on your roster. Like, unless you're playing in a league with minor league slots, that is one spot on your bench less that you get, and that means something. That being said, he's been amazing. I think he is amazing. I don't have a problem taking him the first round, and to be quite honest, I already have, right? So I took him in one of my gladiators on the wheel. I had the 16 turn, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna have some fun. I'm gonna take Paul Skenes and I'm gonna take Tariq Skubal, and kind of just see what I can build from
Wow.
there.
You and the
And
pocket aces.
I love that rotation. I don't know how the offense is going to perform, but
so, I mean, Skenes was the eighth best starting pitcher by earned auction value last year, looking at the RotoWire ranking. So he was the 8th starting pitcher by earned auction value. With that, I was wrong. People who took him, like you said, condition wise, I get it, but at the end of the day, that worked out really well. That worked out really well. That said, it's like when you look at how do you feel about Pittsburgh? You look at it now. Skenes made 22 starts and won 11 of those starts. So if you were just like this, if he's going to make 32 starts, is he going to win 16? I've made this point previously. It's tough. There's no stickiness in like year over year, but the percentage of wins you get as a team with that. And so for him to win 50, that's a lot for a starting pitcher to go out there and get 50% of the wins with that. So if he's going to make 32 starts this year, can you project him to win 16 on a team that may not be 500? And we made mention about this a little while ago with Jose Barrios. He won 16 games for a bad Toronto team.
Yeah.
And we talked about how unusual that was. So for me, it's like I feel better saying that Skenes probably wins 13, maybe 14. He's going to have strikeouts. As long as he avoids the injury bug, everything looks great here. I'm just not taking him in the first round. That's me. But
I definitely won't.
I feel a little better if he was on a better team as well. But I don't feel very good about Pittsburgh. But if I can wait around, like I can take the batter in the first round and take Zach Wheeler in the second round, I'd rather have that Zach Wheeler volume. I'd rather, Corbin Burns, even though I have my concerns about Burns, if I can wait to take Burns late in the second, get that bat in the first, I'm going to do that. So I'm fine with Skenes to a point, but I can't see taking him in the first round.
Yeah, I don't mind taking him in the first round if I'm getting him after the first 7 picks. I just think there is a clear top grouping of 7 to 8 guys that I don't know that Paul Skenes falls in. And like I said, I just don't think there's any chance that he is there come, my March drafts, right? I think he's going to be going way too high for me to be willing to take the gamble on. That being said, I don't have a problem with anybody. Like if someone wants to take him, second or third overall, I'm not going to say anything bad about it. I wouldn't do it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
I mean, I don't have because you think this. I mean, this was Spencer Strider last year. Somebody took Spencer Strider first overall, and so. But the concerns with Strider, he had the previous injury risk, and that's where it's like it's a little bit of a different situation because Skenes hasn't. And we haven't had that big workload jump, and that's always something I'm always looking at. But you look at 2023, he pitched 122.2 innings, and then last year 133. So he didn't have that big jump that scared me away from Strider. That scares me away from somebody else that we're going to talk about today. So that's where it's different. Like Skenes' workload has been, he hasn't had that disruption and resumption that some of these other younger arms that have concerned me previously. So that's where I'm not saying he's Strider, but I'm wondering how much Strider is going to limit how high Skenes goes. Like people are going to be like, oh yeah, we were just here with Strider. I don't want to take him that high.
No, people forget. Like they won't care. I think he's still going to go that
be
high.
A goldfish.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, going back to our previous conversation about what the hell are the Baltimore Orioles doing, if the Baltimore Orioles want a glimpse into the Christmas future, look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like the Pittsburgh Pirates have been a similar team where they've had all these fun, interesting prospects, and they're still a 60, 70 win team because they won't add anything to it, right? So, and they're going to continue to be, a 60, 70 win team because they won't add anything to it, even though they've got even more interesting prospects coming up.
This is that when, again, you and I both said it. This is that window of talent. You should be maximizing, kudos to, you and Paul said it on the Friday, kudos to the Diamondbacks for doing it. I think, and DVR said the same thing. I did a lot of podcast listening the last couple of days, but maximize that window with that young talent and stop band-aiding this unless there's a trade coming. And like you said, there's plenty of cachet for them to make a deal. But if they go forward with that, if Baltimore goes forward with that rotation, if I'm an Orioles fan, I'm like, what are you doing? Maximize this.
Yeah. All right. Next guy on the docket is Shoto Imanaga, who came over from Japan. He technically was a rookie, so I included him on this. This will be his second year in Major League Baseball. He was fantastic. And one of these guys that I was really, really interested in getting. I only got in a couple leagues because I was unsure of what we were going to get, but he had a little bit of a homer problem, 1.4 homer per 9, but struck out a batter an inning. Really kept the walks to a minimum, had a 291 ERA in 171 innings. Where are you at in Imanaga for this year?
So much like last week, I put together a custom leaderboard that Justin will have in the notes, and I have all that, and I have some different things. It kind of stood out to me that Imanaga, like Stuff Plus, is the second worst of all the guys we're going to talk about. He came over as a 90. Wow. In this, like his location plus and pitching plus were positives, were above 100, but his Stuff Plus was 90. And that, to me, it was a surprise when I put this together. I was like, really?
That's surprising me.
Yeah. So that's where, but like you said, some of that is maybe the risk about that's why he had an issue with the home run. So you just look at some of the other indicators we're often leaning on. Left on base rate was up at 80%. Overall, I would expect a slight step back of this group. You look at where he's going right now for starting pitching. He's going just behind Pablo Lopez, Framber Valdez, and Michael King, and just in front of Bryce Miller, Luis Castillo, and Aaron Nola, and your boy Bailey Ober. So the four people I mentioned going after, I want all four of those guys more than I want Imanaga. So that's where I see is Imanaga is currently going just inside the top 75, whereas he may pitch as a guy that ends up outside the top 100. Somebody's taken him as high as 46, and go Cubs go, I guess. But there's more downside than upside here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Imanaga fan, and I do. Obviously, there's going to be regression. I don't think he's going to have a sub-3 ERA, but I do think you're going to get a 25+% strikeout rate, a good walk rate, the homers. Hopefully, you need to be able to keep those in check. But like even if the ERA regresses to like a 3.5 range, like I think he's still a pretty decent value. I think my biggest concern is, something I've mentioned on the pod before, which I still haven't done the research for because I haven't started my pitching projection, but I will be probably here doing this research here in the next week. Is this feeling I have that Japanese pitchers really struggle with their health in their second full season at the major league level. And I've got to sit down and do the historical research on that. And he was a guy, because we've had so many guys come over and be really, really good. Ohtani being, one. But then they get Tommy John really, really fast, or they had, look at Kodai Senga, last year, right? Was great in his rookie season, and then all of a sudden, broke down physically in his second full season. And so this is something I want to do the research on, because I feel like Imanaga did deal with a little bit of minor injury issues last year, if I'm remembering correctly. So it is something I'm a little bit concerned with, is that, and so after I do the research, I'll have a little bit better idea of whether or not I'm completely fading him, or whether I'm going to kind of just go, hey, no, it was anecdotal, or just bad memory, or you remember the guys who get hurt, but you don't remember the guys who are fine and continue going.
Right.
So I apologize. But I do love Imanaga from a skills perspective. I just think that he is a very solid pitcher. The fact he came in the major leagues and threw 29 turns in the rotation, and was just pretty steady all year long. If the health isn't a concern, then I don't really have concerns on Imanaga for the most part.
Fair enough.
All right, let's talk about I think the only reliever on this list, but a well-deserved reliever on this list, and this is one I got wrong. Like, I will just flat out say I got this one wrong, and that's Mason Miller. He's going to pick 50 currently in NFBC Draft Champions League since the middle of November. He was just a lights-out closer for the A's last year. I had massive injury concerns. I had role concerns because I didn't know how good the A's were going to be. But I mean, he proved everybody wrong, and right now he looks like one of the best young pitchers or relievers in all of baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and a guy that is probably worth a top 50 pick. Where are you at on Mason Miller?
Love Mason Miller. I've made the mention. This is one of the reasons all spring training stats are useless, or spring training games are useless. I saw Mason Miller pitch for the first time in some late spring training game in 2023 on TV, and I was like half asleep, and I was like, "Holy shit, look at this!" So I drafted him as a $2 guy in a reserve round in my AL league, and then I traded him for Christian Javier, trying to chase a title. Yeah. So I wish I still had Mason Miller. I did take Mason Miller last year in AL Labor because we draft early, and I was able to get him at $8 because of the uncertainty. You know, back then they weren't sure if it was going to be a starter, if he was going to be in the bullpen. He ends up going to the bullpen and absolutely shoving. So that's where, and right now he's going as the 5th overall closer, which to me is just, it's like, okay, he was amazing last year, and we go into the situation. You know, obviously the ballpark change has to be considered. We don't know how that's going to come into play, and if Oakland's going to be better. And a lot of people, from what I've been listening to and reading, a lot of people think Oakland's going to be better this year with things. And so in that case, you could just, and plus not to mention the uncertainty and the volatility of the closer market this year. Why not? Why not take that? Why not take that chance? You know, he's going. Somebody's taking him early 3rd round. I guess that comes down to build, but Miller's sitting there right at 50. With that, as long as the body holds up, honestly, can't argue it. And all the pieces are there for him to have another great season. But again, if you were concerned about the injury risk last year, then I don't know what happened last year that made you forget. Like, oh, he's fine. He's still young. He still throws hard. And those are still 2 big leading indicators of injury risk. So you have to, I would still be just as concerned. And I wouldn't be like, I would not be all in, like, forget injuries. He's done it for 1 year. He's fine. He's still young. He still throws extremely hard. Those are still 2 very strong leading indicators for arm trouble.
I mean, here's the thing though, like when we're talking about, like, I am in the camp of you pay for saves. Like I have no problem paying for saves. I think that people who don't pay for saves end up having to spend a lot of their capital in season on trying to find saves. But if you look at the closer pool this year, you've got Emmanuel Clase, who's probably the safest of all of the closers, though you did send a little piece.
Yes, I want to talk about that when you're done.
We'll talk about that here in a second. But after that, like, you start looking down the ADP. Josh Hader has, you know, he's had his ups and downs.
Oh, and he's reworking his mechanics, by the way.
Yeah,
if you read the latest Mining the News, Jeff's got some notes about what Hader's doing this winter. So always a plug for one of my favorite columns to read, but go read Mining the News.
I'll definitely go give that a look. Edwin Diaz, you know, has had injury issues and kind of inconsistency issues. Devin Williams, obviously, you know, had a major back injury coming into last season.
And Gopheritis moving to Yankee Stadium now, too.
You know, Ryan Helsley's been up and down. Rossi Iglesias has been up and down. Felix Bautista's coming off of injury and still going in the top 60 picks. I mean, there's a lot of risk to the top tier of the closer pool. Mm-hmm. So, like, is Mason Miller any riskier than any of those guys?
No.
I'd argue that he isn't. And
no.
that the skills are just as good, if not better, than all of those guys. So I'm here for, like, I'm doing a complete 180 on Mason Miller after fading him completely last year. And I'm completely in this year.
Yeah, Miller's not going to be there in the 5th round. Just you know, if you're trying to look at what you're going to do, Miller's not going to be there in the 5th round. Yeah, like, as you've referenced, by the time we get the main event season, he may not be there in the 4th round either.
No, he won't.
So you're going to have to pay. And the point I sent Justin Paulinino about Clase is I was digging into some research last year because, you know, Clase he's number 1 going for closers. His ADP is 34 right now. He's going into 2nd round just in some places. And you look at it, and he is. I went back into StatHead and said, okay, give me all pitchers with 3 consecutive seasons of 40 plus saves and 70 games pitched. And that report gave me 2 results: Clase the last 3 years, and Eric Gagne in 2002 to 2024. Then I'm like, all right, show me anybody with more than 3 consecutive years. It's never happened. Never. And then I was like, okay, just show me anybody who's pitched 4 straight seasons of 70 games. Forget the saves, just 4 straight seasons. And it gave me 1 result. The most recent result was Mark Melancon And you as a Giants fan is very familiar with what happened to Melanson as that fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like, I wanted to look at a reason why should I not be taking Emmanuel Clase where he is. And I mean, we can see what Clase, the cutter is probably arguably one of the top 3 pitches in baseball. It is disgusting what he's able to do with that. And he's done it so well for so long. It's like, why, if he's going clear number 1, he's in the bold predictions. I'm saying he's not going to be a top 5 closer this year. So I'm saying by the end of the season, Mason Miller could be better than Emmanuel Clase. And I wanted to look at, again, somebody can always be first, but we've never had a pitcher go 40 plus saves and 70 plus games pitched for 4 consecutive seasons. And Clase, his save total has gone up each of the past 4 seasons, from 24 to 41 to 45 to 47. And we talked about towards the end of this last season just how heavily Stephen Vogt was leaning on that bullpen. And we saw it in the postseason. Clase was not Clase in the postseason. And perhaps that was the things catching up. But that bullpen had 4 different guys throw 70-plus games last year. And I'm very curious. Like, when we look at teams, we said the Nationals taking a step forward. I can see the Guardians taking a step back because of that usage pattern on how that bullpen was taxed heavily. And how it's going to bounce back. I loved Cade Smith last year. He was kind of like Mason Miller light-ish stuff-wise, but again, that's a big. They really leaned on that bullpen, and I have my concerns with the Guardians, and it starts right at the front with Clase, because everybody's saying take him here, but I'm trying to help you think about what if. Let's look back at history, and history is always, if you don't learn from previous mistakes, you'll suffer them again. And we have never seen somebody do what Clase is attempting to do this year.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about that, but I totally understand where you're coming from. As far as Miller goes, though, I just think he's a pretty safe guy. I mean, obviously, he's injury risk. Guys throw as far as him. Guys got his injury history that he does, but moving him into the closer role where he doesn't have to throw 150 plus innings each year, is going to do wonders for a guy like Mason Miller. So I'm here for that this year. Let's talk about Yamamoto, because when I was putting together this list, I haven't drafted Yamamoto anywhere. I wasn't really completely tuned in on where he was going in the ADP. He's going at pick 52 right now in the ADP, a year after missing a lot of time with injury, showing really good skills when he was on the mound and finishing the year on the mound. Where are you at on Yamamoto?
Not at this price. He's going ahead of Garrett Cole, Lopez, Valdez, King. To me, he's on the Dodgers. Dodgers should win a lot of games, and Yamamoto, if he stays on the mound, should have plenty of run support and whatnot. It's kind of crazy to me that the guys that have shown the volume, the Lopez's, the Coles, are going around to 2 round, the full round. I'm 53 to, they're going around later. I would rather have the known, the volume from what Cole's given me, from what Valdez has given me, from what I saw out of Bryce Miller last year, what I've seen out of Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola is going 2 rounds later than Yamamoto. So I'm out on this market price because I feel it's too high.
It's way too high. Like, I mean, I get that he is a really good pitcher, pitches on the best team in baseball. But we're talking about a guy who was only able to throw 90 innings last year in the regular season because of injuries. I know he came back from the postseason and finished the year on the mound, but and then you add in the fact, I talked about, like, I do have this belief that I'm going to do the research on that Japanese pitchers struggle with their health in their second full season at the major league level. Like, I'm just out on Yamamoto. Like, I don't know how you can project him for more than 120, 130 innings at this point. I know Steamer's projecting him and Depth Chart's projecting him for 159 innings, but like that just seems way pie in the sky for him, for being on a team that is going to run a 6-man rotation to protect Ohtani and him probably, and Blake Snell. I think that is just an outrageous projection in terms of innings. And maybe I'm wrong and I look silly, but I can't pass up on all those guys you mentioned either, right? Like, Aaron Nola has been like the most steady pitcher in terms of innings in Major League Baseball over the course of the last 5 years. Like, I don't understand how you pass up on a guy like Nola or a guy like Cole, at that guy like Pablo Lopez at that spot. I'm out on Yamamoto for this year for sure. All right, this is one you and I aren't going to agree on, and I don't think anybody is going to be surprised when we talk about Spencer Schwellenbach going to pick 96. He was fantastic last year, through 123 and 2/3 with a 3.35 ERA. He is a really young, good pitcher, does not give home runs, does not walk guys. Go ahead, outline your case against my boy Spencer Schwellenbach.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm not going to read everything that I wrote up for the bold prediction, but I'm going to start off with, while I often agree with Justin on things, this is an area where we differ. So it's like to me, I look at this situation much like I looked at Spencer Strider last year. A guy had, with the injury history, that had a baseline of 0 and went from 0 innings pitched to, in Schwellenbach's case, 65, and then all the way up to 168.2 last year. And that workload increase, almost 160% increase. And even if you're like, okay, all innings aren't created equal, and Schwellenbach doesn't throw as many pitches. Okay, I went and looked at pitch count. His pitch count increased by 175%. And he's young. And these are massive increases. And my biggest thing with these types of guys, we don't know how the young body is going to recover from this type of situation where you went from 0 to 60 to more than double that. And then what happens? And this to me reads just like Strider's situation last year, where everybody else, the marketplace was, I love Strider. And I kept looking at that. Okay, you love him. Why should I not? And the more I dug into this, I'm like, this is why I don't like him. I remember having this discussion with Nick Pollock in the car. I'm like, look, I don't want the guy to get hurt, but the conditions are too unfavorable for me to do what the market's saying. And that's how I feel about Schwellenbach. Right now, he's inside the top 100. He's going in front of Grayson Rodriguez, Hunter Brown, Tyler Glasnow. That I get. It's like maybe the bet should be which one of those two guys will have more innings pitches, or Schwellenbach or Glasnow. Max Fried, Shane McClanahan, Sonny Gray, Zach Gallen. Like he's going 2 rounds after before Zach Gallen type of situation. So that's why, like, I don't want somebody's gone as high as 61. So just at the start of the 6th round in a 12 team for Schwellenbach. I'm just saying I'm not there because I'm too reminiscent of the Spencer Strider situation. I would love to be wrong. The kid pitched really well last year, and we need to have. I love watching pitching, so I'd love to be wrong. I don't want to see a repeat of Spencer Strider here, but the conditions are too reminiscent for me to get on board with Schwellenbach being taken in front of some of these other guys.
I get it. I mean, I do. As much as I want to argue against what you're saying, I totally understand where you're coming from. That being said, like, I'm just not as worried about it until we see some sort of warning sign, right? Like if he looks bad or something's wrong in spring training, then I will probably jump off it and be like, hey, I think Jason might be right here. Other than that, I think I'm just going to take the gamble on it because the skills are just so good. We're talking about a guy who, is super young, has 25%, 26% striker rate, a 5% walk rate. The underlying skills are really, really good. Gets swings outside the zone, does not give up home runs, great command, great control, young. Like I said, threw 160 something innings last year, so he can handle a workload as long as he stays healthy. I just don't think that there is very many bad things. Like, I honestly think when I do my projections on Schwellenbach, he's going to end up being a top 15 starter for me in my projections. And if his arm blows up, but that can happen to anybody. And I just don't see the warning signs that maybe you do, though I do understand like the jump and workload concerns. All right.
Like I said, would love to be wrong on this.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. If I didn't have that concern, this would be the pitcher I'd be all on board with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, the skills are immaculate. Like, I just don't, they're like, honestly, like, him being as low in the ADP as it is, I feel like is somewhat of a gift. I totally understand if other people feel the same way as you do, but I do think that part of people's apprehension is just not watching him pitch, because when you watch him pitch, you just see I think he is an elite guy who has great command control, and I think there's even more strikeout upside in this arm. Let's talk about another young guy who, obviously all these guys are young guys, but who came onto the major league level, was really good, had some struggles down the late, and then spent some time, on the IL as well. But Jared Jones threw 121 2/3 innings last year, 4.14 ERA, had a 26% strikeout rate with a 7.5% walk rate. Where are you at on Jared Jones for 2025?
I enjoyed watching him pitch last year. Like when you look at where he's going right now, for starting pitching, he's going just after in a group of Jack Flaherty, Carlos Rodon, Justin Steele, Spencer Strider, and just before Brian Wu, Yusei Kikuchi, Kodai Senga, and the aforementioned Sasaki. So market-wise, he's there. But I would say that the same kind of concerns is the big differentiator between a lot of those teams. Like, I don't know what Pittsburgh is. I don't think they know what they are either. Their bullpen situation's kind of risky. So within the lens of the surrounding cast, I have my concerns about how Jones is going to be able to. I mean, last year, 6 wins and 22 starts. We mentioned how Skenes won 11 of his 22. Jones won 6 of his 22 with that. And like I said, I liked watching the guy pitch. I'm just concerned that it's going to be a struggle for him to get to double-digit wins. The strikeouts should still be there as far as workload management. It's great. The Pittsburgh has done a really good job with these types of things. Just going back over the numbers, 122, 126, 121. It's like, so he's been there with that. So at least that risk factor for me is something I always look at with these young arms is offset. Now he's still 22, 23 years old. So we still have some of those things, but Pittsburgh's done a good job of so far managing this. But I have a tough time looking at Jones thinking this is a double-digit win guy. And we're still going to have some issues with ratios just as he learns, continues to hone his craft on things. So to me, I mentioned all those other names. I'd rather have all of them than where Jones is currently going. Sometimes I think we fall into this trap of the stuff we draft on the stuff and not the context of that stuff. And Jones has got really good stuff, but at the end of the day, he still pitches for an also ran second division club with a questionable bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, I really love Jones's stuff as well. I do worry about the team though. I mean, could the Pirates be a sneaky team coming in like that? That lineup isn't great, but it is interesting. And when they add Bubba Chandler to this rotation, which they should do at some point this year, that's going to be one of the best young rotations in all of baseball when you've got Skenes, Mitch Keller, Jared Jones, and Bubba Chandler.
Yeah, it could be pretty nasty in that regard.
This is a team that is just like 1 or 2 free agent acquisitions away from being really, really good. And it's surprising that they just won't make any of those moves, right? Like this team, like even if this team had just gone out and gotten like a Tyler O'Neill type of player, like think of how much better that offense would look, with Tyler O'Neill sitting in it, instead of Josh Playos or Andrew McCutchen.
Yet another year of Andrew McCutchen. It's like, I love the fact that he wants to stay around, but there were other opportunities here. I mean, I do like the Spencer Horwitz addition to their lineup.
I like the Spencer Horwitz addition. Like Joey Bart has been a fun reclamation project for them. Obviously, I love Brian Reynolds. O'Neill Cruz is just one of the fun young players. Like, to watch, like obviously I think they need to do something at shortstop for this team. But like this could be a really good team with like 2 other pieces in this offense. And it's just a shame that they refuse to like spend. But as far as Jared Jones goes, like I think there is a lot of upside here in terms of the overall stuff. I do worry that he had a little bit of a homer problem last year. And that he wasn't much of a whip asset, 119 whip. And we've seen in the minor leagues, like he can have like a 120, 130 whip, which I think people kind of underrate. And I think this ADP may be kind of showing is, he can tend to walk a few too many guys in outings or give up a few too many hits. And that could be a problem for him kind of building up over the course of a full season. And then he did miss quite a bit of time last year, only threw 120 innings because of it. So I'm a little bit more tepid, I think, as you are on Jared Jones. than a lot of these other guys maybe on the list, but I'm not opposed to drafting him. It really just kind of depends on where he falls. I just think he's going to have a much higher ADP than I think I'm willing to go for, especially as we move into March drafts. All right, let's talk about another one of these young guys. One that you are very familiar with, and that's Shane Baz, Tampa Bay Rays pitcher. Came back off of injury last year, but just looked great when he was on the mound. He was able to throw 79 and one-third innings, a 3.06 ERA, just a 22% strikeout rate, which is a little bit concerning for a guy who we've seen better strikeout stuff from in the minor leagues and in his short stints at the major leagues. But it may just be an adjustment period. Where are you at on Shane Baz for 2026?
So this talking about him gives me a chance to plug. I recorded the Rays preview with Bubba on the Bubba and the Bloom podcast on Friday night. It's going live Tuesday. And so you can hear us talk a lot about all the Tampa Bay. But one of how we start off that is, let's not forget that you need to throw away all your preconceived notions about Tampa Bay pitching, because they're no longer in Tropicana Field. They don't have that home field advantage. And there have been several articles written, even going back as far as 2013, about how induced vertical break is played up at Tropicana Field and how it's benefited the pitching and it hurts the offense. And Baz is like one of those guys that fits perfectly into that mold. But again, it feels like, you may not have the numbers look, but how many career innings do you think Baz has thrown
at the major league level?
Yeah.
Well, what I'd say through 79 last year, and I think he's had maybe a total of 60 for that, so maybe 140 innings.
Close. 119 and 2/3. But it feels like, as I told Bubba, it feels like that Baz has been in the fantasy periphery for a lot longer than that. But between the injuries and whatnot, he's only pitched fewer than 120 innings with this. So to me, it's the biggest concern I have is we don't know how pitching outdoors in the Florida climate, because we can look at park factors all day and be like, Steinbrenner is Yankee Stadium, same dimensions, but we're talking about Florida climate. We're not talking about the outdoor climate that Yankee Stadium enjoys in late March and April and May and June. And remember, the Rays are playing a lot of home, air quotes for those of you guys listening, a lot of home games in the first half of the season. So they're going to be outdoors in those Florida elements. If you live on that Gulf Coast, about the prevailing winds in that area. So I'm just concerned overall with how any of the Rays pitchers. Now I do again, on the Bubba podcast, you can listen more. I do feel there's a lot of hidden value in that lineup because the offense should be better with things. But I have my concerns with Baz because of that concern. And we mentioned earlier about where he's going. Right now, he's going just after Ryan Pepio. Again, same concerns apply. Sandy Alcantara, and just in front of Brandon Pfaadt and Zach Eflin and Seth Lugo, Christopher Sanchez, Taj Bradley. I mean, sense of theme. I don't know if he is misplaced here, but like I see Sean Manaea going almost 2 rounds later, and I'd rather have Manaea type of situation. But I'm not. It's not like, as we were looking at some of the other names, going, no way. I mean, there's like 5 guys I can name right after him that I would rather have. But I get chasing the Baz upside here. I don't have too much of a problem with this because I look at some of the other names and I'm like, yeah, it's, flip a coin. I'll take it. So this may be one of the first time where I'm not excited about the guy, but at the price, I think he's fairly priced.
Yeah, I think he's fairly priced too. And obviously it's a small sample and it becomes smaller when you split it up, but like he was actually pretty good at limiting home runs on the road last year. Only gave up 3 home runs in 44 innings on the road. So that is a little bit more reassuring. I think my biggest question marks is 1, the park, like you said, but 2 is we just haven't seen how he handles a workload. You know, like Baz is just, because of being kind of slow roasted, being a Tampa Bay Ray.
Yeah, he's been low
and then getting
on the crock pot. So.
Yeah, and then getting injured. Right now, Steamer has been projected for 157 innings. That's insane. I just don't know how you can project 157 innings.
Agreed.
From the guy, being a Tampa Bay Ray, and still being young, and they want to protect that asset. I'm probably more in the 130 to 140 ish range, but I do think it'll come with pretty decent numbers. It's not going to be a 3.06 ERA like it was last year, but like a 3.60 ERA and 140 innings, like that's fine where he's going. But you're also being drafted around guys who, have, maybe a little bit less upside if you're talking about like, 90th percentile outcome, but workhorses, guys like, Seth Lugo is going to throw a ton of innings. Like that Zach Eflin is going to throw a ton of innings. And like they're going to volume their way past him in strikeouts, even if he has a better K per nine. So I do have some concerns in them. We just don't know like how the stuff plays up when he passes that 100 inning threshold, when he passes 120 inning threshold. We just have very little history on him because he's been slow roasted and then got hurt. So I'm definitely willing to take a gamble on him where he's going. I don't think the price is bad at all, but it really comes down to your roster construction. Like how risky is the top half of your pitching staff? Because if the top half of your pitching staff, has guys that you feel aren't super stable, right? If you draft a Spencer Schwellenbach, should you be drafting a Shane Baz? Probably not, right? If you draft a Paul Skenes, like, a guy that we, think's amazing, but we don't know how he holds up over the course of a second full season. Like, should you be drafting a Shane Baz? I don't think you should. Like, I think you want to be really careful about guys like Shane Baz in terms of your roster construction and not piling, a bunch of high risk guys onto your roster at the same time.
100% agree.
All right, let's move on over, and I think this will probably be the last guy we cover today, and that's Luis Gil. Gil is a really, really interesting guy. Obviously, like he was the rookie of the year in the American League last year through 151 innings with a 3.50 ERA and a 27% strikeout rate. Definitely can struggle with walks at times. His walk rate was 12% last year. And in spite of that, only had a 119 whip. And when I say only have a 119 whip, it's just because he did walk quite a lot of guys. I'm actually a little surprised that the reigning AL Rookie of the Year, a guy who pitches for the New York Yankees, is even this low in the ADP. Currently, Luis Gil's ADP is 165. Where are you at on Luis Gil?
So maybe the market is scared a little bit on a couple of things. So for one, like he's another guy, won 15 of his 29 starts.
Yeah.
And despite the walks, despite what you talked about. And to me, it would be hypocritical if I was like, oh, I'm all on board with Gil and saying I'm not concerned about workload jump. I mean, let's remember he missed almost all of 2023. And that was cut. He had his elbow surgery, missed a ton of time in 22, missed a ton of time in 23, and then just went 151 and 2/3. So to me, this is a guy that I have a lot of red flags for because we don't know how that body's going to react that second season. And the walk rate, to me, Gil is one of those pitchers I am actively trying to avoid. Now, if I'm wrong on this, but this is not the type of pitcher that's going to end up on my roster. And I was trying to look at like why is Gil going where he's going? Again, just Taj Bradley and Sean Manaea are just in front of him. And just after him is somebody who I perpetually end up with, Nick Pivetta. And I'm going to end up with Pivetta again this year. I don't care where he signs. Nate Eovaldi, Mackenzie Gore, we mentioned, Bowden Francis, Brandon Woodruff, Tanner Houck, Spencer Arrighetti. So again, it's like Gil is, I guess, accurately put, he's going where he kind of should. And maybe that speaks to more to the depth or the lack thereof of starting pitching. It's like, once you get to a point, these are the risk, and this is the risk profile. Your catcher rankings, you talked about, you had different buckets. Like you need a name. I don't know what Paul's called this, but you need some kind of name for this area. Maybe it's the caveat emptor, buyer beware area. And there's some upside here, but this is what you should look at for downside too. And Gil is somebody that you mentioned earlier. I want to pay for my saves. Well, I want to pay for my starting pitching. And I want to find some stuff because if I get down to this point, I'm like, oh crap. Well, I have Manaea. Looking at my XFL team, I have some of these names that we've mentioned, but I have Manaea. Gil is somebody again that I am going to skip past. And if I get to that point, I'm like, I'm going to go ahead and take a hitter and just slide down and take another chance on another one of these pitchers afterwards versus taking heel, because I'm just concerned about how that body's going to react. And again, I don't want to come across as hypocritical and say, oh, he's fine. Whereas everybody else in the same condition, I have concerns about. So everybody's in the same bucket. When you go from a 0 to a big workload, I am going to fade you against the marketplace.
Yeah, like when I say like I was surprised to see him this low in the ADP, is more of a like I guess I didn't give the market enough credit, right? Because I do think he's really appropriately ranked here in terms of his ADP. I think there's a lot of risk. You mentioned the workload concerns, that massive jump from not pitching at all in 2023 to pitching 151 innings last year.
Maybe that's why his back gave out a little bit too. Remember, he had a strained back towards the end. And maybe that was the first sign. It's like, whew, man, what am I doing?
That may also have just been the Yankees saying, "Hey, listen, we want you to be available for the postseason, so we need you to hurt your back real quick."
My back doesn't hurt. Swack! Ow, my back hurts. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, I love Luis Gil's skills. I do have concerns about that walk rate. I do have concerns that the 15 games that he won is not repeatable year after year, and that there could be some a little bit of regression there in the ERA. So I'm willing to take the gamble, but he's definitely not a guy that I have flagged as, hey, I need to end up my draft with Luis Gil. Because I like a lot of those other guys that you mentioned that are going around just the same spot.
So his final, it's just kind of looking at his game log, is kind of funny to look at a couple of things. So over his last 8 starts, he had a 4.38 ERA and a 5.76 FIP. But in those 8 starts, he had one outing where he allowed, his last outing of the regular season, 4 home runs to the Pirates in 5 2/3. And then he had 2 other games. He had a 6 walk outing against Cleveland on August 20th. Just before he went out with the back, and then a 5 walk outing against the Angels of all teams on April. So it's like he was kind of all over the place to close the final stanza of the season. Again, won 4 of the 8 starts, but 39 strikeouts against 24 walks and 8 home runs, 4 of which came in 1 start. He's just, hey, I'm just working through my mechanics to stay warm type of situation. So he's kind of all over the place, and perhaps that's why he is where he is in the marketplace. But again, to me, it's I have that big concern that served me well with these young arms, and that's why you're not going to find heel on my teams.
All right. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. Jason, where can people find your work, and where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me Blue Sky, and then I have the AL Central Bold Predictions, and just so I can tell you the names of those, I have them over here. The guys that I have talked about in the AL Central Bold Predictions: Lenyn Sosa, Gus Varland, because somebody has to close in Chicago. Big Christmas, Joneski Noel. I've also got. I also have Emmanuel Clase, who we've talked about. Dylan Dingler and Bo Brisky for Detroit, Jonathan India and Noah Cameron for Kansas City, and Manny Rodriguez, and David Festa for the Twins. I really like Festa this year. Somebody that I've
we definitely need to talk about Festa, because I love Festa as well.
Yeah, so that's who I have as my 10. That I'm wrapping up the writing of it all today, and so that'll be live at RotoWire tomorrow. I've already mentioned this earlier. I was on with Bubba on the Bubba and the Bloom podcast to do the Rays preview. We went a nice tight hour on that on Friday evening, and nothing's changed. So it's not like the Rays have done anything that'll change any of that. So that's coming out Tuesday. So I encourage you to listen to that podcast if you're not already listening to it. But I know Bubba's going through all the different team previews, and he's been staggering them out. And he told me that Tuesday will be the one that we did. So please check that out. And listen to it. And then, as we mentioned last week, let us know what guests. I know a few of you guys had said you want Chris Clegg on, and somebody mentioned getting the General Ian Kahn, getting him back on. So we definitely want to do that. And anybody else that you guys would love to hear us talk through on Sundays, because unless we have something major, we are back on Sunday regulars now, especially with it heading into the peak of draft season and that stupid foosball being just about done. So unless you're a complete sicko and doing playoff fantasy football, no, this is all baseball for us, except I do have a big college basketball game this afternoon. UCF taking on number 7 Kansas, who they beat last year, which was great. And so I'm hoping they can repeat that, because it is the home opener for Big 12 play. And my Knights are having a really good start to the college basketball season.
Nice. You can reach me on all social media platforms. Justin Mason FWFB. Actually started posting some TikToks recently.
Those have been fun, dude. I've been watching those.
I thought I would, I've been talking about wanting to like do more video content and kind of, maybe try to grow my TikTok channel. I was like, what can I do that's fun? And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go through all of my Justin Mason shirts and
all 5,423.
I honestly have no idea how many exactly I have. So
I guess I think I said somewhere around Valentine's Day you're going to run out of shirts.
I don't think it's going to be that early, but we'll see. Definitely could. And then, I'm writing at Fantasy Pros, writing at Fangraphs. Obviously, I'm on this podcast, and the Friends Fantasy Benefits podcast is going to restart here on Monday. So that will wrap us up for this episode. For Jason and myself, thank you for listening. Have a fantastic baseball offseason.
Stay warm.